fucking woke and brace yourself for some creepy and conspiracy videos and other theories about UFOs and other things that I do not know, but we shall hear them. Let's dive in.
Putin had said what he wanted. We could have negotiated. Did you know that 1 month after the invasion, Russia and Ukraine were ready to sign a peace deal in April 2022? But Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of UK, personally traveled to Ukraine to meet Zelensky and stop a peace deal. This has now come out. The war would have been over 2 months after it started. Europe would not be short of energy, food, or fertilizer, and the world price of oil and gas would not have skyrocketed. None of your bills would have gone up if Boris Johnson had not personally met with Zelensky. And here's what went down. According to multiple former senior U.S. officials, in April 2022, Russia and Ukraine negotiators appeared to have tentatively agreed on the outlines of a negotiated interim settlement. Russia would withdraw to its position on February 23, when it controlled part of Donbass region and all of Crimea, and in exchange, Ukraine would promise not to seek NATO membership and instead receive security guarantees from a number of countries. Reasonable? Is Putin the war criminal or Boris Johnson? Putin was ready to sign this peace deal. You would have averted the deaths. You would have averted the energy crisis. We don't even know how many lies, how deep the lies go. Only when these things begin to come out. And how many people report this? Is this on CNN? Is this on BBC? It's such a controlled narrative. According to a Western newspaper, a pro-Western newspaper in Ukraine, it said that even if, Boris Johnson said, even if Ukraine is ready to sign some agreement on guarantees with Putin, they are not. Western powers are not. Johnson's position was that the collective West now felt that Putin was not really as powerful as they had previously imagined, and that here was a chance to press him. So they were going for war. They were trying to destroy a part of Europe. You cannot have European security without including Russia. Russia is a part of Europe. But they're alienating Russia. Sounds like a bad marriage. They seem to have this formula down pat. The entire world sanctioned Russian oil, froze Russian assets, attacked the Russian ruble, forbade Russian stocks to trade. Netflix even canceled paid subscriptions. Can you imagine that? On what basis? You're a Russian, you didn't start any war, you paid for your Netflix, you can't access it anymore. Russian news was wiped off the internet. There used to be RT, you used to hear both sides. They demonized Russia and completely stopped any flow of information from the other side. We're still living in this, and you think we have free press, free speech? They're tightening the noose. One day they will say, I cannot preach the word of God. And I will preach. I will preach to my dying day. I would rather die.
You know, that video is very sad. If you have felt the same way, can share hapo kwa comment section or anything hapo hivi yenye umelana ama unaweza tuambia anything tu. Kuchangia tu, unaona? Unaweza ongea useme kitu.
You think artificial intelligence cannot see everything you do? Watch this.
The other eye is the radio signals, the sonar from the Wi-Fi router, and they just learned to predict this is where the human beings are. Then they took away the camera. All the AI had was the language of radio signals bouncing around a room, and this is what they're able to reconstruct. Real-time 3D pose estimation. AI has turned every Wi-Fi router into a camera that can work in the dark, specially tuned for tracking living beings.
one of Pope Francis's chasubles, you can also see a symbolic depiction of extraterrestrials from the Atacama Desert's geoglyphs. What higher Christian message is he conveying to us through this symbolism? We are told that the Pope wore the chasuble with this symbol in honor of his visit to Chile. But something doesn't add up here, because he wore this chasuble on other occasions as well. Let's also pay attention to the coats of arms of the Catholic clergy. Have you ever wondered what they symbolize? Take a look at this coat of arms. Does it remind you of anything? Perhaps a UFO. And that wouldn't be surprising. By the way, did you know that the Vatican owns the world's largest binocular telescope called Lucifer? The papal throne has its own astronomers and consultants on UFO matters. The Vatican has its own space program, which is more informed and better technologically equipped than NASA. But let's get back to the symbolism of the coat of arms. Considering the Vatican's interest in the topic of extraterrestrials, what does this symbol mean? What is its true sacred significance?
That is, in fact, the shape of a sphere or a dome creates conditions for accumulating energy. Doesn't this remind you of anything? If you have noticed the similarity with the domes of religious buildings, you are not mistaken. Ancient legends say that the first dome temples were built more than 24,000 years ago by the representatives of an extraterrestrial race known as the Apexians. They also created the first religion in the first dome-shaped structures for the purpose of collecting energy from humans, which is known as Vril. People gathered in those temples and prayed to the Apexians as gods. This was a process similar to what we have seen in the spheres of the electrostatic machine, where static electricity accumulated. In the temples, people's energy, Vril, flowed through the building into the domes, accumulated there, transformed into a coiled state, and was transmitted to the Apexians. The Apexians built structures of various forms in order to collect energy. Those could be pyramidal structures, or towers with pyramidal or dome tops, ending with a pyramidal spire. Many such ancient structures are considered to be places of power. The paradox is that those were places where power was taken away, not given. It is also quite interesting that to this day, such shapes of structures are mainly used for places where mass gathering of people, decision-making, and emotional outbursts take place. If you wanted to tell the story you just heard as a comic strip, how would you draw it? We will show you an ancient artifact that depicts this process as a comic strip. We see a temple structure with a portal above it, and a flying saucer at the top indicates that it is extraterrestrial. In those times, people couldn't know about such technologies. On the left, we can see people and an indication that they're giving away their energy. This is shown in the form of snakes flying away. On the right, we see two planets and below them representatives of an extraterrestrial race, the Apexians, who receive energy from humans. And it is clearly shown that humans fed not only the Apexians, but representatives of other extraterrestrial races as well. To this day, through our temples, we feed unknown creatures in the universe. If any of you doubt that we still worship them to this day, you shouldn't. What is unknown to us is not unknown to the priest. And this information has nothing to do with any religious feelings or emotions. This information is about the physics of processes. Thus, our hypothesis opens a new approach not only to physics, but also to the history of our humankind, and reveals certain cause and effect relations of the processes taking place in society nowadays.
This is just
Now,
crazy.
take another look at the symbolism of this coat of arms. It's not just a hat, as they tell us. The spiral cords represent the coiled states of waves that connect the alien saucer in two groups of pyramids. The pyramids signify the hierarchy of different social classes of people, from the lowest to the highest. The highest in this hierarchy are connected to an alien race called the Apexians, and all the energy converges towards them. It's a ritual action and a magical rite. They explicitly tell us that they collect tribute from us like foolish sheep, and it is not for the Almighty God, but for some beings in the universe. And now, take another look at Pope Francis's garments. Now the statement of Pope Jean Paul II becomes clear, who said that the Eucharist is a cosmic act. Yes, cosmic, because even when it is celebrated on the humble altar of a country church, the Eucharist is always in some way celebrated on the altar of the world. And of Pope Francis, who declared that extraterrestrials might even be closer to God than we humans are. In the newspaper published by the Vatican, an article titled "The Extraterrestrial is My Brother" appeared, written by Father Jose Gabriel Funes, the head of the Vatican Observatory. The Vatican is a place where every symbol holds deep meaning, from the architecture of the buildings to the clothing, accessories, and decorations. Everything has meaning. In the symbolism of the Vatican, we find references to pedophilia, Satanism, and even service to extraterrestrial beings. So, who is the true Lord of the Vatican and the popes? Whom do we follow?
Soon we shall be doing a full episode about the Vatican, everything there, the symbolism. Keep it tuned hapo hivi. Na if you have more information about these videos, andika hapo kwa comment section. Ama ni vipi? You are our guys. If you cannot understand Kiswahili, Google. Keep
August
it tuned.
1946, Admiral Richard Byrd organizes Operation High Jump, the largest expedition ever to travel to Antarctica.
By the end of February, something happened. There was an entrance to the center of the Earth through the South Pole, and he took planes into the South, under the South Pole. And when he did that, he discovered that as he flew over the pole, suddenly he's looking at things that shouldn't be there. His squadron flew under the Earth, into the Earth.
That turns into this lush and green area, and he can't even believe his eyes. He tells how all of a sudden he starts to see a shimmering rainbow city that's made of crystal. His airplane is taken control of when he suddenly sees these flying disc-shaped objects around him that lead him to the ground, whereupon he's escorted into a cavernous type of an area where he meets a being he refers to as the Master in his diary. The Master tells him that they're highly disappointed in what humans are doing with nuclear weapons and how they've recently destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they really are concerned about what is going on the surface of the planet. They tell Admiral Byrd that they hope that humanity will ultimately stop this. They're very concerned that we are ultimately not just going to destroy ourselves, but could harm our planet, which is their world as well. Could Admiral Byrd's story point to a profound connection between the ancient traditions of strange beings living inside the Earth and the modern-day UFO phenomenon? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and believe we may be fast approaching the time when we will find ourselves face-to-face with the beings of inner Earth.
Let's keep it tuned. You can't imagine in Switzerland, it was raining crystals back in 1870. Google
Now John Levine continues with what he and Commander Rutledge found in the 3-mile-long ancient craft on the back dark side of our moon.
So what is the discussion in detail back in 1976 between you and Commander Rutledge about this extraordinarily beautiful Polynesian-looking preserved female in one of the cockpit chairs?
Neither of us could understand how could she possibly be that well preserved.
And what is it that you're looking at first?
Her skin was all intact, and she was wearing clothing, a dress of some sort, possibly a jumpsuit type of thing. And it seemed to be very much intact, no deterioration at all to speak of.
What about those tubes on her face?
Well, William Rutledge believed that they had to do with controlling the spaceship.
That those tubes on her face were controlling from her mind this huge 3-mile-long craft, and she was the pilot and the gray was like a co-pilot?
Well, they had a control panel that looks like you put your hands on it, and apparently the controls, the ship's computer, interfaced directly with the pilots.
Okay, and we saw that in Roswell. The 6-fingered panels. I've talked with both scientists and military people who have confirmed for me they've had their own hands in those panels from 47. There were 6 fingers on those particular beings.
5 fingers with opposing thumb.
So that would match what came down in Roswell.
Yes.
Did you and William Rutledge then have discussions about those facts, and did you have information from NASA about look for 6-fingered embedded panels as control of the ship?
I received practically no briefing because I got there just in the nick of time for the flight. I'm sure Rutledge may have been highly trained and have had those discussions with NASA. We'd guessed that the ship had been there perhaps millennia and maybe longer.
I was going to ask you if today, have you learned from any analysis that has been done how old this big, huge 3-mile long spacecraft, how long has it been there? How old might it be?
There have been guesses tossed around that it might be 1 million years old, might have been 100 million years old. I've even heard 1 billion years old.
And that this female was still in the pilot's chair, preserved?
Absolutely amazing, stunning.
How?
Technology beyond ours.
Whoa. It's crazy.